finally, on the far left is not Adib Jalal. Unfortunately, Mr. Adib Jalal from Singapore, who is the Festival Director for Archifest 2012 and 2013, cannot join us today because he has fallen ill. But we've managed to get an equally interesting educator, not an architect, but an artist who is very well versed with installation in public spaces and also community-centered approaches in his project. So Saubin is a specialist staff in Multimedia University. He's also the founding member of an arts collective called Rumah Air Panas, RAP. His art practice encompasses conceptual art, installation, mapping project. In fact, interestingly enough, last year, BetterCities invited Saubin for a talk which was entitled City as a Project. And he talked about one of his mapping endeavors, which is called wasteland twinning. So we've invited him today on a short notice. We're really happy that he can make it. And he will talk about projects that he has done. Whilst they are not really architectural related, they are art projects that are in public transitory spaces.
Hi, good afternoon. So what happened when the architect is absent? You get the artist in, all right? So if the architecture is gone, it's not there, you bring in the art. All right, thank you, Leah, for mentioning art as well. So what I want to share with you is basically two projects that has been done and I personally involved. Whoa, they are moving very fast, just like memory skipping backwards. Lamu, let arts move you. Okay, and contemporary arts and school project, KAIS, all right? Basically, we're exploring what are the possibility of moving contemporary art out of the so-called conventional idea of white cube spaces. So Lamu and KAIS were basically two projects that the collective that I was involved in. Rumah Air Panas has been involved in either coordination. So Lamu, Let's Not Move You actually happened in 2007 October, and it actually took place in the KL Central Station and involving different work. What happened is that we were able to sort of convince and solicit with the KTM in Kuala Lumpur, the Kereta Api Tanah Melayu, all right, to bring in artwork into the space, into the station, both in the old station and the new station. And what was interesting is that we were able to negotiate that such that they will provide us one coach, actually one whole train, to put in work. Okay, what we do is that we invite artists from KL, Malaysia, and Southeast Asia to submit proposal ideas, what kind of work that we can bring in that deals with the issue of spatiality, temporal issues, or mobility, okay? That could be an interesting intervention in that kind of space. Now, we heard a lot about speaking about public spaces, public place. What exactly is a train station? Is it a public space? Yes, passenger goes in and out. But yet it is very much like a public space in custodian, that a certain institution is actually overlooking, looking into it, in a sense, in name of security, in the name of transport, mobility, all right, to continue to sustain the flow of blood of the city. But what is interesting is that how often do we, or are we able to actually intervene, right, interject, or actually play around? What is interesting, when we approach to the KTM and the general manager of the train company actually say, oh, this would be good because with all the delays, 5 and 6 years back, with all the delays of the train, maybe it would be nice to have a kind of intervention, some artwork. So maybe for them, the idea of the artwork is sort of have certain decorative or have certain interesting, so-called, to divert the attention of the passengers in waiting for an hour or 20 minutes. So those are the spaces that we are looking into, all right? And here, for example, what is on your left-hand side, top left corner, what happened here is that when a Japanese curator came, they said, no, this is very interesting. You would never be able to put a projector and shine on the railway track. And we were able to propose that idea. And the idea was actually one of the artists working with video and then time-lapse video of a travel across the train and have it put in there. So it become an interesting interjection. Lika City Pete over here on the top left as well. Again, she has been taking pictures, photograph of the sky from where she stays in, which is based in Singapore. And we thought when she proposed the idea to us, that would be an interesting idea to have that, an image of the sky in the coach. So it's actually positioned across the whole train, right? And on to my right, okay, that's the work by Walk the Rock from Jogja. And Walk the Rock is actually a photographer with Rangmas 56. And his idea was to actually invite participants to send in photographs that have to do with their domestic life, their domestic ideal, what is home to them, what is home to you. And to invite participants to send in photographs of what is home, what is the important things when you're traveling between places, from work to home. What do you want to see? What are you rushing to get back today? And these are different images of home that Walk the Rock actually selected and have it put in all the space. Now, if you look at these spaces, all the spaces that we are looking at are actually very expensive spaces, right? These are spaces that owned by the media company. So what is interesting, in a way, that this is a public space, is owned by KTM, but in order for us to actually have this intervention happen, we have to go through the media house which owns the space, right? Because the space has been actually, in a sense, rented out for them to the advertising. And it makes it a very interesting metaphor. This is my body, but in order for you to use my body, you have to go to someone else to get the permission. Right? That, again, the sense of ownership of what is a public space, what kind of places are we talking about here? Who's the custodian? In what sense? Public civil security, or even to the sense of like this is actually about economy and finance. And again, when we were actually recceing for all the works, right, there were all this rail handle which was empty, blank. So Coxie Wai, the artist, actually responded to her experience of coming back to KL, and she felt lost in a sense with a lot of signages on the road. So I am lost, we are lost. Thus she came up with all different images, graphic images, the one in yellow and black, okay? And the other one were actually a performance done by Donna Miranda, a performance theorist and dancer based in Manila. And what she did was actually what we call 24 hours in KL, whereby she took the train, traveling together with all the commuters, and she took a picture of an interesting picture for her, which is actually a declaration of romance and love that she found somewhere in the wall. And then she took the picture and then she printed it out and then showed people, the commuter, engaging them and talking to them and say, what is relationship to you? What is love to you? I think she was heavily in love at that time. And then she was actually getting everyone to take part in that project and have that engaging the commuter, the user, right, of the train, and in a sense represent them back into the project. So in the context of discussion here, we are not sure, in a sense, or when I start thinking about it, well, art or contemporary art project might not be able to intervene or to change permanently as an architecture project could, but in what way can we contribute, in a sense, okay, to the sense of changing or leading towards a sense of place. Okay, I would like to show you the next project done by another artist, Lau Man Ling. So what Lau Man Ling did was actually invited artists, friends, or anyone to come and recite poetries, or read from book. And the project is called 433, as a homage to John Cage. So at 4:33 p.m., people will come in, and for example, the late dancer Caesar Chong on the top actually read Ulysses by James Joyce, okay, in English or in Chinese, and the performer are able to actually improvise, to start thinking, I want to read it this way, I'm going to read that way. Australian artist Gabrielle Bates, actually, what she did was actually reading a book from a colonial novel about a colonial woman coming to Southeast Asia with her husband, and narrating her stories. So what happened is that this performative work entering so-called controlled public space with the so-called endorsement of the authority of that time, commuter train. And it creates a lot of tension with, sometimes it's a sense of passive aggression with other user. So maybe this is not exactly a kind of safe or nice placemaking technique, okay, if I may use the word or method. But it might be interesting in a sense in pushing the relationship or the kind of tension between what is a public and what is private space. When we have someone reading aloud in different language, in different interesting posture, right? Compared to someone speaking, hello, hey, you want to come over, huh? You know, we hear that very often, right? And in compared to experience in, let's say, traveling in the public transport in Japan, uttering a sound actually is considered a grave offense to the others. This placemaking, I suppose, has a lot as well with a kind of a social psychological conditioning of how people would perform and to carry oneself in a public sphere, in the public domain. Right? So I would like to share the last project, which is called Contemporary Art in School. In a different way, the previous one is a public space, but is privately owned. And this is actually a high school. What was interesting is that the headmistress were very friendly to us when she found out that we were interested in doing a kind of contemporary art project in Stella Maris High School in Pudu, which is actually in the compound of a Catholic church and surrounded by a urban monument for the last 20 years, which is still being developed, I suppose. Yeah. And it is a nice little space. And what can we do with the students? What can we do in this space? We came up with sort of like very grandiose idea. Let's say, oh, maybe we can engage the community. You know, the community here, we were talking about the teachers and the students and the parents and whoever they were working there. But I think in a way we were able to best engage the students, in a sense, because of the cooperation and the directive of the principals. Okay? So let's work together with the students, let's bring in workshop, let's bring in site-specific performance, site-specific artwork. So on the top left is actually Tengku Sabri, a sculptor, working together with his wife, Mastura Abdul Rahman. So came up with a proposal, playing with a certain team, responding. This is actually the head of a fish, which is called a head schoolmaster fish, and making a wireframe sculpture, right? And to the right, top right, is actually, again, a video by, produced by Kok Siu Wai. And it's actually a video about how to meditate oneself by massaging the head. So what I want to share with you in the context of this discussion is that how do we curate work in this type of space? Right? We were thinking a lot about the spaces, although we are not making place in the sense as an architectural discussion would be, but we do have to think about the positioning of the work, in what context, right? What kind of work would be interesting in what kind of space in relation to the user, right? Well, the response might not be psychological or emotional or affective. It could be something that is just sparked about, oh, I'm playing here, we are doing sport, and here there's an image, all right, of a lady massaging her faces. Hopefully, it could be an intellectual response, or it could be a thought that say they can make that connection. So this is in terms of how a curatorial process would consider space in this instance. And at the bottom is actually a sound installation by Australian artist Dean Lingui, who actually recorded sound of different type of happenings of periodical sound and also accidental sound, and have it actually placed in, and this is actually the canteen. So if you have been to a canteen of any high school or primary school, you would know how it sounds. Okay, it's almost reaching white noise. And here, right, Bahaya. So you could actually, you have a put on, the student would have a put on the headphone and listening to the different type of sound composed by the artist. So these are some of the consideration I think as curatorial project at times could take into. Yeah. Okay. Run Malaysian, run. is actually a project, a video artwork, which is actually runs 360 degree by Vincent Leong. Is actually in the locker room. The corridor by Lim Kok Yong is actually an interactive video artwork. And what we like most actually, we're running a series of workshops with the students for them to decide what kind of mural you want. Instead of telling them, we want to do mural here, this is my design, but where? How? What kind of image? What kind of content? And what is interesting here is that, this one is actually a trumpet lawyer at the staircase, which is actually, behind the staircase, you would have a view of the church. So this student actually responded to the bookshop brief by saying, hey, it would be nice if I am able to see through that. So she proposed the idea of a trumpet lawyer, and they would have to sell that to the principal. So we think this kind of, in that way, to provide that ownership, I suppose, of a place to the people, firstly, we have to engage them in a conversation. But if this space is actually a custodian, or there's a custodian, there's someone overseeing it, there's an agency overseeing it, and it is not allowing you to take part in that, maybe it's time to change that agency and the custodian. Thank you very much.